You are listening to Road to CEO, nothing but in-depth interviews with executives about their journeys as CEO. I'm your host, Will Marlow, and I hope you enjoy the show.
I view my role as CEO, my job is to help my team members be successful. So, it's asking them every week, almost every time I talk to them, what do you need? Is there anything you need? What can I do to help you?
I'm really excited for today's episode of Road to CEO. When I first decided to do a show about CEOs, about their journeys in business, Bret Peters was on my list of people that I wanted to have on. And so now here he is. Bret is the CEO of ADF Solutions, which is a digital forensic technology company. We're going to learn all about that. But first, Bret, thank you so much for being on the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Will. Always love spending time with you. And I'm jealous of your hair. What can I say?
Well, you know what? I'll tell you, this may be the last episode where I have hair this long. I'm possibly going to be cutting it. So,
all right, just don't go to my barber.
I did have short hair at one point. Not quite as short as yours, but it was getting there.
That's all right. You have to, guys like me with this haircut, you got to make ball jokes, right? So go for it. Let them loose.
Yeah. Well, so thanks again for being here. Why don't we jump right in? I'd love to hear about, your journey to the company you're at now. You've had some really interesting experiences, though. I'd love to actually start at the beginning, because you worked at a company that I'm familiar with, having grown up in the DC area, but very far, in my opinion, from the technology field, which is where I think, you've been in for a long time. You started out, I think, at Freshfields Market, is it?
Yes. Yeah. That's back in the early 90s. And it was even funny how I got there, because when so I'll start you out kind of with my education. When I graduated high school, I wasn't ready to go to college. I wasn't thinking like, hey, this is something I want to do. I think I, kind of phoned it in terms of the filling out applications and things like that. But once my friends all started going to college, I was like, they're not around here. It's different than what I expected, right? So I at that point I was a little late, so I enrolled in community college, and that was a great experience. I loved it. And of course, you have to pick what you want to study. And I went to Northern Virginia Community College. They had an amazing criminal justice program. And so this kind of ties back into where I am today. So we'll talk about this and then sort of fast forward. But so I studied I got involved studying criminal justice. I really, at the time, hadn't really planned on going into a career involving criminal justice. But as I studied, and then I got my associate's degree, and then I transferred to George Mason. And of course, if you keep kind of in the same ballpark, most of your credits transfer. So yeah. I didn't really want to be in school, which is ironic now because I teach for a university. But I was the thing is, I loved the professors we had. They were a lot of like former FBI agents, ATM, like that. And so it was really engaging content. And when I transferred to Mason, I also studied kind of administration of justice. So I had this sort of justice mindset. It was kind of, as you go through, you're like, all right, what am I going to do? So my skills were applicable to sort of criminal justice. And then I thought, okay, maybe I'll go into that field. But I met my wife in college, or the woman who became my wife. And she wasn't really interested in marrying a guy who was kind of interested in that field too much. So I started looking around, and because I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I took a job when I first got out. I worked for a nonprofit, had a great experience. We did a lot of work up on Capitol Hill, which gave me a lot of really great experience doing events planning. It was kind of an environmental organization. And then from there, I got involved with Earth Day 1990, which was fun, but again, short-term project. And so I was kind of just trying to get my wheels underneath me. And so then I had somebody referred me to. I was really into creating content back then, which was pre-internet. So
interesting.
Creating content was mostly, it would be magazines or videos. So I did, I would write some articles for some various magazines, and I got referred to go work for a publication called Vegetarian Times magazine. And so I worked for the owner. Was planning to move to Chicago. Went out there for 3 months, and right as I was about to move my wife, we were going to move to Chicago. He sat me down and said, "Hey, Bret, I'm selling the company." And I said, "Well, that doesn't necessarily sound great for me. Kind of last hired, first fired." So I was like, let me pull the plug on this move here. And I came back, and within a couple of weeks, we were shopping at Fresh Fields, which probably, if you're not from the DC or kind of East Coast area, you might not know, people might not know what that is, but it's a natural foods market that ultimately ended up getting purchased by Whole Foods. And I was shopping there, and I met the manager, and we started talking, and he's like, "Hey, you should apply for a job here." And so I applied for a job, and I ended up getting hired to manage all the cashiers and front end and the baggers and all that other stuff. And it was a ton of fun. And so that's really helped me out. So that experience really gave me a lot of good education around cash and cash management. And also just customer experience, customer service because you're really right in front of the customers, and you're under high pressure situations. If you ever go through the supermarket, how if you're actually dealing with a human anymore at supermarkets, you got to make sure you're nice to those people, because those numbers spinning around in their heads is pretty funny to think about all the codes you have to learn. But so that's I was with Freshfields for quite a few years, and we actually were named in 1993. We were named Money Magazine Store of the Year. One of the coolest experiences there in terms of learning about being a CEO is obviously we had a CEO and we had a head of operations. I learned a lot from them, but one of the influences that I thought was pretty cool is I got to spend a little bit of time with Leo Kahn. So Leo, for those that don't know him, he actually founded Staples. He was co-founder of Staples. So most people know Staples. And he was, at the time I met him, he was in his mid 70s, and he and his wife would come into the store, and they would they would roll up their sleeves, and they would just get in and do it. So it really, I don't remember who coined the term. I don't think it was him. It might have been a peer of mine there, but we had this idea of getting an MBA. So when you work like that, you have an MBA, right? Which really means mop bucket attitude. And so the mop bucket attitude is just something I take with me everywhere I go. It's like, hey, you got to pitch in and do the hard work sometimes. So that's sort of Freshfields. We can go on from there.
That's great. One of my first jobs, actually, I think my very first job was at a deli called the Italian Store, which was in Arlington, Virginia. Yeah, great place. Great subs, great pizza, really just authentic. They import a lot of good stuff from Italy. And I remember it was the same kind of thing, though, where the managers would lead from the front, the owner would lead from the front. You would see them all doing good, hard work and doing the things they were asking everybody to do and doing it really well. And I just remember being impressed that ethic really kind of started at the top, and then it would just kind of go down from there. And, it really elevated the quality of work that new hires would. I mean, I saw that firsthand, and I always took that with me as well.
It's so true. And you have to do things you don't want to do, right? Yeah. As a leader, you have to do things you don't want to do. And, I've been a vegan for 30 some years. And but I'd have to get behind the meat counter, behind the seafood counter, and you have to do things you don't want to do, and you had to put aside even maybe personal beliefs to serve the customer. Yeah. So that was a great experience for me, and I really, the thing is, I saw the way that the people around you they would respect the fact that you were willing to do any job taking out the trash,
Yeah.
mopping up the floor, whatever it might be. And that was something I saw in Leo, and some of the other leaders at the organization that really helped me grow. And so I very quickly went from managing the front end to leading a store to leading the entire Mid-Atlantic region. And we grew from 3 stores, one in Rockville, one in Bethesda, one in Tyson's. So I managed a Tyson store, and then I took over the region. So I was managing the entire Maryland, DC, Virginia region as we grew the company with 22 stores, and it ultimately ended up getting bought by Whole Foods Market. And I thought about looking at that transition, but I had a young kid at the time, and I love spending time with him, but working retail is not always conducive to that. A lot of weekends, a lot of nights. And even though I loved it, and I still shop at Whole Foods Market, my sister works there. So she just celebrated her 25th anniversary there, I think, and gets her lifetime discount. So a little jealous of that, but
yeah, that's nice. So how did you become a vegan? I didn't realize you'd been a vegan for 30 years.
Yeah. It was funny. I blame my brother-in-law. So my wife never liked the taste of meat. And so when we first got married, we were very young when we got married, 20 and 21. I'm older. But she would, she was a very good cook, but she'd cook steak and she'd cover it in A1 sauce. And I was like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, you don't want to taste the meat. I'm like, yeah, I want to taste the meat. But, after when you get married, you kind of settle in, you get comfortable. And we gained a little bit of weight. And then my brother-in-law also got married about the same time, kind of same thing. He's like, I'm thinking about going on a diet. You want to join me? And I'm like, sure, whatever. He goes, I heard this thing, you go 2 weeks, eating plants, and you can shed some pounds. I'm like, I can do anything for 2 weeks. Let's try it. And I asked a friend who I knew was vegetarian. I said, hey, tell me about being a vegetarian. He goes, well, I could tell you everything, but you're better off reading this book. And the book was by John Robbins, the son of Baskin Robbins ice cream. But it didn't teach me how to be a vegetarian. What it did is it taught me why I should be a vegetarian. And it really just kind of went through all of the reasons, human health, world hunger, animal welfare, environment, et cetera. And I was like, I'll try it. And then I just kind of never looked back. So, but I really, I do it for a combination of the animals and the environment and my health.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Did your brother-in-law stay vegan?
No,
so it's just you.
No. But the hard thing is that the rest of his family, they all are largely vegetarian, and so that probably makes it. I know he is out eating steaks for lunch, but. At home, they have a lot of vegetables.
Okay, I get it. Yeah.
I think it's a personal journey for everybody. I used to be a lot more of a rabid. You should be a vegan, And as I get older, I'm like, everybody has to make their own choice in life. And the thing I'm excited about is I was at a coffee shop yesterday. I was asking about something vegan, and he's like, "Oh, you're a vegan?" I said, "Yeah, it's been 30 some years." He says, "Well, how did you do that?" I'm like, I have no idea, because back then there weren't any of these amazing meat-like products, which most of them taste pretty good, actually.
I've had a number of them recently. What do they call it? Beyond Meat now.
Impossible Burger,
yeah. Those are getting pretty good.
Yeah.
I imagine it was probably difficult back then. Now, you can find information on all kinds of different diets and everything. I imagine that was a lot of effort back then to really kind of figure out how to do it.
The good thing is, I think working at Freshfields, I was able to pick up dinner and take it home.
Sure.
Right? There's a lot of great stuff. So when I left there, and so what I did when I left is, and we were running at the time, just the three main stores that I had, they were each doing about $20 million a year. And that was back in the early 90s.
Yeah.
So these were very, very productive stores. And anybody that had been in, they were very tiny as well. The footprint was very small compared to what they are today. But really, that's where I really got educated about profit and loss and shrinkage and just the whole movement of money and money management. That was a different sort of MBA for me, right? To really get that level of education. And the other interesting thing was, we used to gather. The corporate headquarters was in Rockville, and the CEO would gather us all of the department heads or vice presidents together. I think it was about once a week where we'd get together, and we had this big, conference room, and there were probably 40 of us sitting around the table. I learned a lot from those conversations, and they weren't all good, right? They weren't all good. I never had any issues, but I saw people get called out in different forms, and it really taught me the value, really kind of reinforced the value of kindness, and the importance of kindness in business, and kind of a lot more fun if you're nice to people. So talk to me a little bit about that. So it sounds like, at those meetings, people maybe would be called out maybe in an unkind way to try to motivate them, I'm assuming, or, that was kind of the intention, perhaps. That's the intention, right? I think, and I think, you've talked about this on some of your other podcasts. Again, part of it depends on where the money's coming from to run the business and what the intention is, right? So if you're funded by sources that want their money back quickly, they're going to get impatient. And so, and as a CEO, one of the things you want to generally do as a CEO is you want to try to grow your company. So if you're growing your company, a lot of times you're spending money. And as an investor, they want to see that return, and they're not always as patient, or they may not match your vision for making sure that growth is tempered the way that they want it to. It's either maybe it could be too slow, it could be too fast. So I think it brings a thought to mind, which is you really have to be aligned with whoever you report to, right? That's the key thing. And even if I think that probably they tried, and they just, there sometimes you just don't have a match there. And that's probably what happened. So I left there, on great terms. My plan was to go into the restaurant business, which kind of was counterproductive to what I was thinking about, of not wanting to work nights and weekends. Right. And once I thought more about that, I was like, that not going to do that. My brother-in-law was in the insurance business, so I went and I worked with his agency for a few years, and it was great. Becoming a licensed agent, really enjoyed serving people and helping them protect their property and their families and things like that. But I remember this would have been, mid 90s, 94, 95, somewhere around there. And I'd have people come in and they'd say, hey, Brett, I got this quote on the internet. Can you beat it? And I was like, what the heck is an internet, right? What the heck is an internet? That was probably the most important question I ever asked myself, right? And so I researched, I went, and back then you had to go because I didn't really know that much about the internet. I went on to the newspaper. I'm like, let me find a job doing something in the internet. And I found a job that I applied for at PSINet. And so this was one of the early internet companies. They laid fiber and stuff like that. And I got hired, and I went to work for them. And the first 2 weeks, I probably learned more in those first 2 weeks than I did in 4 years of college, just in terms of things that I needed to use in the life skills that I needed for the next 25 years of business. Just learned, they just did a brain dump. The guy was an amazing trainer, told us everything we needed to know about the internet. And, it was a call center type experience. It was not fun. It was call counting, hardcore telesales. And, you're selling internet connectivity and websites to people that also hadn't heard about the internet.
Right. So that's fascinating to me because one of my very early experiences was co-founding a software company that served universities. And this was at the time, it was kind of cutting edge. It was friend to friend fundraising. And, now, of course, there's Kickstarter, there's all kinds of crowdfunding options. But back then there wasn't anything like that. And so I did have an experience of really selling something that you had to educate them on what it was, and why it benefited them, and it was parts of it were a grind. It was really just very difficult, but at the same time it built some skills and some muscles, I think, that really served me well after that. I would not sacrifice that experience. Like if I could go back and do something different, I absolutely would just stay the course and give myself that. Approximately, it was about a year where I had to just grind out these sales calls in the higher ed market. And, so, I got some sales, but it was tough.
It was tough. And I tell you that slice of time, I was only there for 5 months. I got recruited, basically a kind of a friend had heard, he approached me. He's like, "Hey, I heard I heard you are in the internet business." I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "I heard you're in sales." And I'm like, "I am." And he's like, "Well, I have an investment in this small little internet company down in DC, and they don't have a salesperson, and they I'm sure they'd love to talk to you." So I went down and talked to this company named Fig Leaf Software, and took a job with them as the first salesperson, and then grew the company. Spent 20 years there. So ultimately, I led, not only started sales, but then grew the sales team, and led the sales team throughout my career there, and left when we sold the company. I was chief marketing officer. So I spent probably I was always doing sales and marketing, but then I really started focusing on marketing while still managing the sales team. And that was, it was just shy of 20 years.
Wow.
And just a great experience, although, lots of ups and downs along the way.
Yeah. Well, tell me about that. So that one was so actually that's where you and I met. I think you were with Fig Leaf at that point when we connected. What did you learn there? What was it like at Fig Leaf? And you were a partner.
Yeah. So I didn't start out as a partner. And one of the things I think is interesting for your listeners is, how do you, so a lot of the people you interview, they started the company, right? I think maybe I'm a little bit more of a journeyman CEO, right? A little bit a longer road. I'm by nature somewhat risk averse. So I'm kind of conservative in that way, that I like risk, but it's usually fairly calculated. And I just never had the desire to kind of go start my own company, but I love building companies. I love building things and serving people and things like that. So when we started when I started the company, they were just doing website development. And again, this was 1995, 1996. So really, very, very early on, mostly brochure type sites. But the co-founders at that time, it was really interesting how they started the company. They were two college kids. They'd come out of college at University of Maryland. They liked using this product called Cold Fusion. And it was a programming language. It's still in use today. It's not popular, but similar to PHP or .NET in a lot of ways. It was a tag-based programming language. And this was Steve Drucker and Dave Watts, and they actually ended up co-authoring a book with a guy named Ben Forta. And so the three of them, they wrote this book. Well, two of them ended up starting Fig Leaf. And so as they got started, writing this book, they would have user groups where they would kind of vet the material, which was a really cool way to kind of get feedback from the community and also learn at the same time. So, I was joining this company that had this idea of collaborating with users. And then also, as they learned things, they started teaching the users. So they very quickly became experts and they started teaching it. And the original company was called Alaire, and it ended up getting bought by Macromedia, which got bought by Adobe. So kind of all these roll-ups, but they became a certified trainer for this product, Cold Fusion. And the product got adopted by government, and the government started sending a ton of people to training. So over the years, and we ended up representing, Adobe and Google and HubSpot and others, but we trained about 35,000 students in web design and web development technologies.
That's awesome.
I don't know if that probably didn't answer your question.
No, it did answer my question. And it's interesting that is that the second company you were with that was acquired by, was successfully exited like that?
Yeah, it was. So Freshfields was, and so one of the great things about it, we because I was early on, we had stock, and so that was a great experience for me. I was able to make some money, buy a house, and of course, the funny thing was with Fig Leaf is we thought, hey, this is going to go faster, right? This was before the .com boom, and then also the .com bust, and so we really thought, there were companies like Razorfish that went fast, and just that we didn't have that experience. We had plenty of ups and downs along the way, but we were doing great work. I mean, we built and maintained all 500 National Park Service websites, which was a pretty cool project. We did lots and lots of government sites, universities, commercial sites. So it was building websites, but these were dynamic websites. So it was sometimes the design and the development, sometimes just the development. And one of the, really, I think one of the best experiences I had there was, we had built a business of a training business, which was only, at its biggest point was about maybe 30% of our revenues. So it would kind of go up and down. So as people would learn to do web programming, and then they would kind of hire web programmers, and then they learn to do it, and then so kind of market driven. But we had built a really successful business with training for Macromedia and Adobe, and we had some interest from my colleagues, my partners, to do some work with Google. And so I reached out, I tracked down, who the guy was who was in charge of Google training. And I ended up, I went out to Mountain View and met with him. And I said, listen, tell me about your training department. He said, well, it's just me. And I said, well, that doesn't sound like it's going to scale very well. He's like, it probably won't. And I said, well, do you have plans to add other trainers? He's like, well, we're still thinking about how we're going to do that. I said, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you let us, we already have this experience training. Why don't you let us be your trainer? And so he was very skeptical. And I said, hey, just give us a shot, right? Give us a shot. And I was lucky enough to work with, some pretty brilliant technologists. And so we picked a guy to go get trained, Dave Galarizzo. He was one of the partners, and he went and got trained, and they loved him. And so then we said, hey, look, you love him. We got another guy also named Dave. Let's get him trained. And so we ended up getting, a handful of people trained, and the agreement, they wouldn't sign an exclusive agreement with us, which was a little frustrating because, we thought we had the credibility to do that, but they're Google, right? So, but we had sort of a gentleman's agreement. I said, listen, if you will promise to communicate openly with us about, what we do right and what we do wrong, we will make sure we'll take any of your feedback, and if we have to fix something, we'll fix it. And so we ended up, we were Google's #1 enterprise training partner, and did all of their overseas partner enablement for more than a decade.
Wow.
It was a lot of fun.
Wow. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very interesting. So you've kind of brought us up through your experience with Fig Leaf, and you've made a couple comments that, give me a sense of the importance you place on company culture. I've heard of I think it's called the culture code. Right. Is it? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So I learned about culture code from HubSpot, and that was the first time I got exposed to it. and reading the HubSpot culture, and I saw a culture with Google from my exposure to working with them, and of course Adobe and Macromedia, the other companies we had worked with, they had a culture, but I don't know that it was really fully documented. Well, Google somewhere along the way went and documented their culture. They had the idea of do no evil. I think it's changed now. People have their opinions about them, right? We'll just leave it at that. But HubSpot, I started working with them. It's been about 10 years, and I kind of just accidentally ended up bumping into them. I was invited by one of our other partners to go speak at a conference up in Boston, and I saw this orange. I was in this, I went up there just to deliver this speech and fly back the same day, and I said, "What's all this orange going around?" Oh, that's HubSpot. Like, don't And I didn't. It was, this would have been what, 2011, and so as I kind of met the people at HubSpot, I really liked them. They were kind of cool. And somewhere along the way, they documented their culture code. And anyway, it turns out, I think Netflix was really the first one to do it. And I really give all these companies credit for spending the time to document it. They're all super long. They're all like 100 plus pages of words and images and things like that. We boiled ours down to 14 slides.
Nice.
And I'm really proud of that fact. That is
impressive.
I don't have brevity, but our slides do. So the way we did it, and I highly encourage anybody that is thinking about this for their company to welcome to check out the one, ADF Solutions Culture Code. But look and see what's out there. There's a lot of companies that have now done this, and the idea is we put really into practice. We surveyed all of our team members, and we said, what's important to you? What are the words you would use to describe the company? What types of people, when you're thinking about hiring, what type of people do you want to bring on board? And I can get in later to what we do as a company, digital forensics, but we have a lot of retired law enforcement, and people that are kind of interested in our mission of helping stop human trafficking and child exploitation and cybercrime and counterterrorism, things like that. So this culture emerged that it was interesting. We took the results and some of them we put in a word cloud, and we started seeing these words come together and evolve. And one of them, there were things like growth mindset, communication, integrity, leadership, a lot of buzzwords. But we codified those, and we said, all right, this is who we're going to be as a company. And when we hire, we always share that information before we hire. And we let people know this is what we expect of our team members. And what do you think about it? One of the things we actually ask the prospects that we're thinking about hiring, we ask them to go read that. And one of the hiring things that we do is we ask them to tell us about what there resonates with them.
I think that's great. And I was inspired some years ago by the Netflix culture deck. I think that must have been the first place that I had ever seen a culture document, really, put at least one that was really accessible and and kind of easy. But I remember it being like 100 pages long. So I said, that said, I went out and I put in the time and I produced my own. It was about 70 pages. They were not detailed slides. It was very brief slides, but it was still 70 slides. I've recently gone back and I've trimmed it down or consolidated it really to 40 slides. So I'm not quite at your level with 14, but it's an improvement.
I don't know what the right number is.
Yeah, no, I don't either.
The cool thing is we came up with an acronym for like all of the bullet points. So the acronym spells out to legend.
Nice.
And so it's like lead and learn, engage and energize. It goes down the list. But so when people do a great job, and I'm lucky, I work with just a phenomenal team, and I really work with legends. These people are doing great things, and so that just calls out. It sort of just circles back to, hey, when you get this feedback from customers, you really are a legend. I mean, this is stuff that's sinking into their memory from the experience and the great products that you develop and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I know that it's been really helpful for my company as we've grown in terms of, because we do the same thing. We want anybody who's applying for the job to go through the culture deck, and we want to know if it resonates with them. But really what we say is, this is both for us and for you. We want you to be happy here. And the fact is if this doesn't resonate with you, then you might not end up being happy here, because this is, these are the traits that everybody here more or less really shares. And, the idea is that you don't want that, you want that to come naturally. So yeah, that's how we.
Yeah. And I think where it can help you, I don't know if you've used it in this fashion, but if you have, sometimes, you have friction between people and everybody, especially when you're growing, people that are driven. And sometimes there can be some miscommunication. And rather than calling that person out, you can just kind of gently, like, this does, this kind of behavior, not you, but this type of behavior doesn't really fit with the culture, right? So it's kind of referring back to that document, and it doesn't, maybe a little nicer way to help kind of course correct.
Well, it's interesting because I also started doing, I volunteer as a wrestling coach, and we're putting together a good program for high school kids in this area, in the Arlington, Virginia area. And, it's interesting because I also put together a handbook. I don't call it a culture document for them, but I did put together a handbook for them. And you're right. It's all about those expectations so that you can point to this and say, like, this is something where this is not arbitrary. This is not an opinion. This is something that we want to, whether it's a value or a rule or whatever it is, I found it really is helpful to have that documented before maybe, and if it's a negative interaction, before a negative interaction takes place, it's nice to have all that stuff documented.
I agree. Yeah. I think just giving it's guidance that just helps everybody know sort of what's expected. And, if a company has the opportunity to pull that information from team members, I mean, I think that also helped with, for us, because it wasn't one person or one department saying, this is the edict of what our culture is. It was like, hey, everybody, like, what do you think? What do you think it is? What do you think it's been? What do you think isn't working? What do you think we should fix? And what's the kind of the be all ultimate of where you want it to be? And it sort of takes on a life of its own.
Yeah. So I'd love to get into ADF Solutions and hear, what's ADF Solutions all about? What kind of business is it?
Yeah.
And hear a little bit of the background on that.
Yeah, it's a cool company. I'm just really I feel lucky to be involved and blessed to be CEO. So I joined. So after Fig Leaf, I joined the company as head of marketing, and I really didn't care about title. So I was chief marketing officer at Fig Leaf, and then I was just like, all right, well, what do I want to do next? I just by happenstance came across this company. We found each other, and I think I was a bit of a unicorn, right? Because I had this deep software experience and marketing experience, and I studied criminal justice, and that was really a passion of mine. But I had never put it into play. And they were looking for somebody who was great at marketing and who could help lead the company in some fashion. Again, it wasn't in my mind to be CEO at that point. I was just going to come on and contribute. And but I had this, really strong passion and desire to help in this industry, and then this sort of software and marketing experience. And so I started out as head of marketing, then took over managing the sales team as well. And then within about a year and a half, my boss came to me and said he was kind of looking to step back. And I give him immense credit for handed over the reins to me. It was probably a 6-month negotiation process to where I was comfortable taking it on. And of course, I took it on August of 2019. And then within 6 months, COVID arrived, right? So it was like, welcome to being CEO. Here's your challenge. But in terms of who the company is and what we do, the full name of the company is Advanced Digital Forensic Solutions. Our co-founders had a lot of expertise in image analysis and image recognition. They realized that this image recognition could be used to help fight child exploitation. And so about 16 years ago, they got funding from the University of Maryland. They got a grant to actually sort of build some software to do this. And they found a funder who had done pretty well for himself. But he basically said, hey, if you get some outside funding from a public entity, I'll give you some more money to get started. And that's really how the company got going. And the really cool thing about it, so at Fig Leaf, we were almost exclusively US based, all the work we did. And this is international. And that was overnight. Just, I love it. I love it. It makes the days longer, but I get to deal with really awesome people around the world. And so we provide these evidence, it's rapid evidence analysis. So collection and analysis and reporting of digital evidence for frontline workers, or it can be used back in the lab as well. So a typical user would be in a counterterrorism type operation, might be a military operator that's forward deployed. In a law enforcement setting, which majority of our customers are law enforcement, they're using it either in the forensic lab to as they pull in evidence, they're looking to quickly see which ones are the ones that they have to pay the most attention to, or if it's out in the field, if they're going out on a search warrant, or they have some reason to search for digital evidence, they will deploy us to quickly, within a couple minutes, start finding digital evidence on a phone or a tablet or a computer. And so the result of that is, it really can put a dent in human trafficking cases, in fraud cases, in domestic cases. And of course, one of the biggest things that we help fight is child exploitation.
Yeah. Wow. Well, it's such important work. Do you ever work with nonprofits as well? Because I know there's some nonprofits like International Justice Mission.
Yes.
They will, they'll do some of that work as well.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, we know them well, and we actually work really well together. They have offices around the world.
Yeah.
They have access to our tools and our training, and we've got a really good relationship with them. We work with an organization named Project Vic, which is, they actually a really interesting story where and I'd be happy to introduce you to this guy. He was a New Jersey state trooper, and he realized that the databases that collect child exploitation material to hash it, so they don't want to send this around anywhere else, that it's already, once it's found, they catalog it, and they use a hash set to actually identify. That's basically like a fingerprint.
Okay.
That if it shows up anywhere else, it's known child exploitation material.
Okay.
And so he realized that every country was doing their own. And so he founded an organization that helps all around the world find and catalog these images so that people don't continue to be victimized. So great, and so the officers that use our tool, they pull hash sets in, and if they're going out on site, they can instantly find if somebody has this on their machine or on their phone.
I see. Fascinating. So this seems like this would be a immensely growing industry. Like, just by the nature of the evolution of technology, the huge problem that you're fighting against, and the fact that I would think, it sounds like we're getting better at coordinating between countries and that sort of thing. Is that what you're finding? Is this industry rapidly growing?
It is rapidly growing, and it's, we're on the edge of cyber. So some of what we do is kind of more cyber related, but the forensic evidence, it's kind of like CSI, right? You have a chain of custody, so everything has to be managed properly, so that it goes from the time it's collected to the time it's analyzed and reported. And so the pandemic has not been easy for law enforcement.
Right.
There are obviously a lot of real concerns by good people around the world in terms of the Black Lives Matter movement and everything else that is being brought to light in terms of social justice issues that have to be addressed. But what that causes is, morale can be low in police departments. They don't have, some of them for, weeks or months on end, they weren't able to report to work. You can't, some of these images and things like that, that they're combating, some of the work they have to do, they can't do it from home. Right. And you wouldn't want to do it from home, right? These people have families too. And they're, these are great, majority of them are great humans who are sacrificing a lot of mental, capacity and causing even themselves, even mental harm sometimes to help combat this. But you're right, digital evidence is growing and the need for these tools is growing dramatically.
Yeah, I have a friend who's a prosecutor in the area, and she has told me how with COVID, there's this huge backlog now of cases that need to be tried. The logistics of trying court cases and prosecuting criminals is immensely more challenging than it was before. And separately from that, she also said on child exploitation cases, there's a limited amount of time when somebody can really work those cases, for their own mental health. They have to kind of rotate a little bit. You can't just do that nonstop for years and years and years.
No, it's a very limited shelf life for somebody who's actually doing that.
Yeah.
People generally have to volunteer for it. It's not something that you're usually assigned to. Yeah. You have to want to be part of those teams. And I think there is some great leadership. I mean, Microsoft, for one, has done a tremendous job really helping to identify how you can work in environments where you're dealing with it, whether it's this type of image or counterterrorism related. There's a lot of online grooming and things of young people, and so they have a lot of techniques and things that they share. They've provided a lot of leadership for that. But this is, again, good guys and bad guys, right? It's at the simplest, right? Good versus evil. It's a story as old as time, and what you can hope is that you can take big chunks, and also I'm an eternal optimist, right? So I think humanity is good. So these are, even though it's an ever-growing problem, more people are good, and I think the best thing that any individual can do is educate your family members and educate yourself so you can protect your kids.
So you've been CEO for about 2.5 years, is it maybe? Or you wouldn't, you've been with I'm sorry, you said August 2019 is when you.
Yeah. So it's been a fun ride. Again, most of that right through COVID. So one of the things, we had a largely remote workforce anyway, because we're spread around the world. Okay. But we did have a physical office, and we got lucky that our lease was expiring in November of 2019. So we let that go, and everybody's fully remote. So it makes it interesting because you have other challenges when you're fully remote. But what we do is those of us that are local, we try to get together once everybody was vaccinated and kind of feeling comfortable getting together. We get together outside so far, but we'll do different sort of light team events, working back to what we can actually do. And but one of the things that I think, and I didn't come up with this idea, it was already in place before I joined the company, is we have a monthly roundtable meeting. And so everybody in the company, it's mandatory, but it's also something people want to generally attend. Nobody gets in trouble if they can't make it, but we just only talk social. So it's kind of the water cooler update, but with everybody in the company. So obviously people have sort of one-on-one or sort of smaller team relationships, but we kind of get everybody in the company and they kind of roll through sort of what's happened in their life in the last month.
I like that. I think that's a nice initiative. And I also like that it's just once a month, because I've been reading about how there's some companies that tried to build, like in the beginning of the pandemic, they would try to build in 10 minutes on to every meeting where, there'd always be some time to have water cooler type discussions. But what were finding is that creates stress because it's like mandatory. It's too much of it. It's every single meeting, and I think, my theory on that is that, the water cooler conversations were all spontaneous. They were all, they were not mandatory. And, it is, it's difficult to try to, and frankly, I don't think it's really possible to enforce it. But I do like the idea of having it, less frequently, maybe once a month, and just kind of having it be a social kind of gathering.
It's nice. And I'm not personally, and again, I listen to the team, right? I ask the team, tell me what you want to do, but I'm not a fan of these sort of like forced happy hours. Like everybody get on Zoom and bring your favorite drink. There's a lot of things like that, which I could take them or leave them, but I'd rather leave them. But I think that, one of the things, we're constantly striving to have fewer meetings, to wrap meetings up a little bit earlier. And so, one of the things I think we've seen is as we sort of wrap meetings up earlier, then people like, all right, well, so, then it kind of goes into some water cooler talk sometimes. And if somebody has to drop, they drop. But that's been great. And I think, the other thing that we do is we really only have two, other than that monthly roundtable meeting, we have two scheduled meetings a week where not even everybody, everybody's not on there, but we'll have a sales meeting and then we have a technical meeting. And the goal of those are just, hey, share what you need, share what's going on, hit the highlights. You got a lot of people, so you got to roll through stuff quickly. And in the technical meeting, it's really an opportunity for the sales team and the customer service team to give feedback to the tech leaders on what are they hearing from customers. So we have everything in place. In terms of, one of the things that we really try to do is I think we're a little bit unique in our industry in the sense that, and people are copying us, companies are copying us now, which is flattering. It's also annoying, but it's flattering, is we're very transparent. So we were really the first in our industry to put our products and pricing out front, right? We just said, hey, this is what it costs. And we won't really try to reduce the people know, they learn, they go out, people are smart, right? The rest of us buy, we know how we like to buy. We go research and then we go through demos, or we'll look at the information online, and then we kind of, maybe we want to talk to somebody, maybe we don't, but we want our customers to have the opportunity to just come through and have a frictionless sales experience. And I think we've done a great job at that. But that transparency, like putting our knowledge-based articles out online, support, chat, all these things really help to streamline the experience and give the tech leaders feedback on what the customers want.
I think that's great. Was there any pushback to putting your prices online? Did people?
We did it as an experiment. So as I spent some time teaching at Georgetown as my side hustle. And you've been kind enough to speak to quite a few of my classes, and you're always a highlight for the students. So
great class.
Yeah, thanks for those. For spending the time, and I look forward to the time we can get back and do that in person. But one of the guest speakers I had, she was editor for Martha Stewart magazine, and one of the best quotes I've ever heard. She said, marketing is testing. Right. And I think business is testing. It's you put something out there, you see if it works. And if it doesn't, you pull it back. And I actually learned that from Google, Adobe, we were working with Adobe, which is very process. Everything had to be just completely polished before it would go out the door. And Google's like, let's throw it against the wall and see if it sticks. Right. And, nobody really pays attention to all the products that Google has sunsetted over the years. But because they have so many great products. So that's sort of the approach we took, like, hey, let's put it out there. And if it causes problems, then we'll pull it back. But it's been great. And I think it helps customers, the more information they have, the things that we've done, we put so first we said, well, we need to get some webinars out there to kind of educate. And this is lead gen, but it's also just helping the customers get to know us and get to know the products better. And then, when you take we had really good signups for webinars, but when you take a look at the recorded webinars and how long people watch recorded webinars, it's like the first couple minutes and then like this just drops. And so we saw that after, somewhere between 3 to 5 minutes, people get bored.
Yeah.
And so for those of you that are still hanging out with us in this podcast, here's the nugget. No, so we created a learning section of our site, which is only 3-minute how-to videos. So we publish them there, we publish them on YouTube. And again, it's just about making the information quick. It's if you get stuck and you're, trying to figure out how to use a feature or do something, you can just Google it and we're going to come up and it's going to tell you how to do it.
I think that's awesome. Yeah. And that's something that I actually encourage a lot of my clients to do is boil down your frequently asked questions from customers into different formats, different, pieces of content, and do your best to put that transparently on your website in a variety of places. And if you do that, naturally, your Google search results are going to improve. There's no way around it.
Yeah, you're the SEO expert, so we bow to you. But content's king, and right. I think so. It had a lot of natural great impacts in terms of helping customers, helping and again, it's sort of self-fulfilling, right? The more you help customers, the more customers you get, right? So.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm a big fan of, I also think there's a karma angle to it. You put something out there for free, you try to be helpful. And, yes, some people may take the information and not become a customer, and that's fine. And I think overall, it's going to lead to more of those customers coming in and frankly, being grateful that you took that generous approach. So no, I think that's a great way you're doing it. So
I was just saying, you brought up a great point there about being helpful. And so, one of the things that's sort of my mantra, you see it in probably almost 9 out of 10 emails that I write, but, one of the things I've seen, like little changes in an organization, we had people saying, please don't hesitate to tell me if I can help you, right? Or please don't hesitate, which automatically introduces a negative.
Yeah.
And in almost every email, it's let me know what I can do to be helpful to you. And the same thing, really, I view my role as CEO. My job is to help my team members be successful. So, it's asking them every week, almost every time I talk to them, what do you need? Is there anything you need? What can I do to help you? And along those lines, my boss, when he hired me initially, he probably one of the best pieces of business advice he ever gave me. He said, you're taking over. And he goes, the main piece of advice I can give you is if you need something or you want something, tell me. He's like, if you don't tell me, I'm not going to know. And that's on you. But if you tell me and I don't give it to you, that's on me. So yeah, that's just great advice, because I think too many people in business are afraid to ask the boss, or afraid to ask their peers, because they think they know what the answer is going to be.
Yeah. I agree with that completely. And I try to, and the challenge I think that we all face as CEOs is that it's easy for information to flow downward, and it's hard for the information to flow upward, to you, no matter how much we encourage it, no matter how many venues we try to create, it's always a bit of a challenge to get information, because just mathematically, if there are 50 people in a company, they can't all talk to you whenever they want. They can't all, even if there's an open door policy, there's only so many hours in the day. And so that in itself creates a bit of a challenge. So I think it's great to have that attitude of encouraging those questions. The other thing is I actually want helpfulness is one of the 3 values that are that's in the culture deck I told you about. So for us, we hire a core, we want the people who work here to be helpful. And it is, and it's interesting because obviously, that could be kind of a throwaway type value. I mean, any value that a company puts out there, maybe they mean it, maybe they don't. I mean, they all sound good, but I think helpfulness is really important for a company like mine because we're an agency. We provide marketing counsel and services to our clients. And, they're going to be asking us to do things that they simply don't know how to do, or they're, because it's not their job to be experts in it. And I just think it's really important for us to really enjoy that piece of it, to like, if we don't enjoy being helpful, then
you're in the wrong business.
In the wrong business. Absolutely.
Well, again, having spent so much time in the in some form of service industry, I love being on the product side, right? We still deal with customers, but it's because you have a different release cycle. Yeah. So you can take the feedback, but you have a little bit of time to react. When you're in a service industry like you are, or in retail, and I feel, especially after the pandemic, I always thought that when we get back together, people would be a little kinder, and you don't always see those. And some people are. I think some people really are, but I see a lot of people that just kind of still, you get out on the road and it's just a little too much, anger flowing through, which is unfortunate because, we all missed being together. And now when we're together, sometimes you just see it's not pleasant. And I think a lot of the workers on the front lines, whether they be in healthcare or food service or anything service related, the folks that are delivering our goods, to our houses and stuff, people got to be nicer to them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So tell me something you don't like about being CEO.
I really love it in the sense that I'm able to help people be successful. The thing that is probably most frustrating is just trying to get the honest, truth from people, right? And I think everybody that works for me is honest or with me. But I think that, I think sometimes people are hesitant to say, hey, this is what I need, or this is what I want. The biggest problem is just meetings, right? And I'm not a big fan of meetings. I'm a doer. I want to spend time doing. Yeah. So I love, I try to block time out to where I can actually focus and get things done. I'm not a big fan. We use instant messenger type solution. Everybody kind of says good morning to one another, or, people are pretty respectful. If they want to have a call with somebody, they'll just kind of ping them first and say, hey, can you jump on a call? And that's pretty efficient. But one of the things I'm glad we don't do is we're not constantly pinging each other. Yeah. All these constant interruptions, it makes it hard to get work done. So I like to, so there's nothing I really don't like. Yeah. I enjoy everything. I just kind of probably wish I had more time for some things rather than others.
Yeah, I get that. And I agree. I mean, I've got a wonderful team, and, I have no concerns about honesty and openness. I do keep pushing to make sure we're communicating enough, so that, because there certainly are instances where I think I know everything that's going on. And then I find out, well, actually that I didn't have all the right information, and I feel like, well, maybe I could have if we'd all talked more, or something like that. But I think that to me that is the balance. I really, and I also really like the way you defined your role as CEO, which is, to paraphrase, I think you said your job as CEO is to make your team successful. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And each of the individuals, I want to see each person achieve whatever they want to achieve. We have a woman on our team who is a burgeoning book author, right? And so she has a book that she's written, and I want to see her publish that, right? I hope she's with ADF for a long time, but at the same time, if she is the next J.K. Rowling, I want to see that path for her, right? I want to, whatever's best for the individuals on our team. I think, I think we're a little bit lucky in the sense that the things that we do are mission driven. My kids are all in their 20s, and I talk to a lot of their friends, and hear plenty of stories about people working for companies where they just don't have that connection.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think everybody on our team is pretty connected. And if they're not, we kind of loop them in. We help them understand the meaning. And the best thing is when you get that feedback from a customer that really says, hey, we solved this case. We got this person off the street that was doing X, Y, and Z because of your tool. And we were able to do it in one day or 1 hour. That kind of stuff. Then people are like, oh, okay, I understand. Like what I'm doing, I'm working from the comfort of my home or remotely somewhere where I'm helping, solve crimes where somebody's in a really unpleasant situation. There's an officer in somebody's house in a probably not a very nice setting, and they don't want him there or her there. So we're very fortunate to be able to do what we do and provide service to people that are doing amazing things.
So does that cut both ways in your business, where on the one hand, you've got the mission driven aspect of it, which really helps because you are, it provides motivation and meaning when you're to the work you're doing. Does it also lead to burnout, or are people maybe distanced enough from?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, it was hard during the pandemic because I felt like people weren't taking enough time off.
Yeah.
Right. And even myself, right? I had plenty of vacation that I couldn't use.
Yeah.
And I think that was the case for almost everybody. We ended up having to roll over. So vacation typically expires at the end of the year. We just kind of kept banking it for everybody. Said, hey, we want you to go and take that trip that you were planning. I think, the thing that I try to do, and I hope I can always do this, is just trying to spend enough one-on-one time with as many people as possible. Even, we don't have a big hierarchy, but I have plenty of people that don't report directly to me, but I like to spend time with them one-on-one as well, just to hear kind of what's going on and make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
So I think the biggest thing is, I think I'm almost the only one in the company that doesn't have a dog. And so So I'm like, go out, walk your dog, just go have a good, and go pet your dog for me and calm your nerves. So no,
I love having my dog in my home office.
Yeah. Burnout's a real, it's a real thing. And I've heard you talk about this on some of your other podcasts. I think one of the questions you usually ask is like, is there a time when you just wanted to give it all up or like that? And it's interesting because I've been lucky to work with some people. I know people that have gotten burned out, and I've seen it, and I've worked with people that have gotten burned out, and I've also worked with people who were able to that they were starting to burn out, and they were self-aware enough that they were like, all right, I got to go, reinvigorate myself. And I think it goes to the point, which is, a lot of people ask themselves, well, what do I want to do with my life?
Yeah.
And it's an interesting thing because, my career has been serendipitous, right? It's kind of like I've been weaving my way through it to get where I am today. And, we'll see where I am in a few years. But the point is to kind of enjoy every day what you're doing as much as you can, and can kind of find the joy in work. Again, hopefully I've been lucky to be able to kind of try to motivate myself and been surrounded by people who are able to get up even when they're having a tough day. And I'm sure probably a lot of your listeners know Mel Robbins, but the 5-4-3-2-1 author. But I think she unlocked the key to it, right? Which is like, if you just start doing that momentum of doing stuff, that is a lot of times what helps you fight burnout.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think of burnout as just exactly like a fire that that you've got to keep going, and, you need change. That's the biggest thing, and the other thing you need really is you kind of need growth, because if a fire isn't growing, then it's difficult to keep it from falling in on itself and eventually burning out. So I actually think the metaphor of the fire works perfectly, because when so then you need to make sure people have a changing job experience, one where they feel a progression towards something bigger. And to me, that really keeps somebody excited.
And I think it's important. I mean, mental health is an extremely important topic for leaders to think about, because we don't know. I mean, especially when we're meeting on a screen like this, we really don't know what's going on the other side of the computer. And there's a lot, people that, at any company, they have spouses, they have family members, they have parents, they have kids, so especially when we're all in close quarters. I mean, it's one thing to leave for the office and be gone all day and not have to think about it. But when you're there and, maybe you're getting interrupted, maybe something happened, or there's some tragedy going on, or they heard of some tragedy going on, this can take an emotional toll. So I don't have any perfect solution for it, but I just think that, as a leader, part of my job is to just make sure I'm talking to each person frequently enough, and I think you have to have a level of emotional intelligence to what are the other people on the other end of the line feeling. And there have been times where I've reached out to colleagues and I've said, listen, I haven't talked to you in a while. I just want to get on the phone with you. Let's schedule some time and let's just debrief. I just want to hear what's going on in your life.
Yeah.
And that's been really helpful. And people, I find, are appreciative of that, because, sometimes you don't have anybody in your house to talk to.
Yeah. Now, I think that's really important to be aware of. And so that actually gets me to maybe my last question, which is, how do you measure success as a CEO in your current business?
Yeah, I mean, we're numbers driven, right? So that is one criteria for success, and you could do it through new logos, but really, what I look for, I think it changes over time, because you can kind of look at different things that you want to accomplish as a business. So it could be like, hey, last year we had a big push to reduce friction points, right? Just to make everything more seamless for customers and for the internal team. But for me personally, what I view as success is if I can help the people in the company grow and push themselves to achieve great things. I love seeing that look of satisfaction when they achieve great things. And I'll give you probably the most concrete example I can, which is we have a gentleman that works for us that spent 22 years as a police officer. And a lot of those years he was in a digital forensics lab. And so, the skill set that you have as a police officer or working in a digital forensics lab is different than what you have when you're when you're running a support line or you're talking to customers. There's some similarities there, but luckily we started this in advance of COVID. But I said, well, we need to take our training classes. He would provide training, but I said, we need to take our training classes and put them online. And we had a plan to do it, but it just was taking a while to execute. And so once we saw that COVID was a thing, and we really quickly, I said, hey, can you just clear your calendar? Don't do anything else other than develop these training materials. This guy was not. I mean, he had done training classes before, but they were sort of like, here's some slides, and I'm going to talk most of the time.
Right.
When he didn't really sit down and think about instructional design and build courseware, I mean, he knocked it out of the park. And
that's awesome.
And that's driven revenue, and it's driven customer satisfaction, and it's driven new business. And that's the kind of thing. And we talk and like, remember that time when, and like, look where you are now. And it's funny because I've been at, I've even been places with him where afterwards, like the person will be like, I know you from your voice, from the training. I know you from your voice. I'm sure you have that probably happen too.
I have started having that happen. Yeah. It's a funny feeling.
Yeah.
Pretty cool. Yeah, that's really interesting, and I love how you're kind of aligned in terms of how you define your role and how you think of success. Sometimes I imagine people would say, I mean, this wouldn't be that hard to imagine. They say, okay, well, I define success as helping my people be successful, but I measure success based on hitting our quarterly target of sales and this, that, and the other thing, all of which of course has a huge place in being successful each quarter, but if there's a huge mismatch between, what your stated kind of definition is and how you're measuring it, I think that's also where, you end up having a culture kind of get out of alignment. So I think that's great what you're doing.
It's all about that culture code and that match. And I think that's where it takes time. I mean, we took probably 6 months to build that and really reflect back on what did we want it to be. Yeah. But I think it all weaves together, right? If everybody treats each other with respect and kindness, and you treat your customers with respect and kindness, and you build products that they want because you're listening to them, that they need, that are going to make their lives better every day, that are going to help do the things that they need done better, faster, cheaper, that's really success. I think the rest of it takes care of itself. And don't get me wrong, I mean, part of my job is to set lofty goals and to help kind of push people to achieve them. But, at the end of the day, what makes me happy is seeing my team members achieve.
So we're at the end of the show here. Any other topics that anything I forgot to ask? Anything else you want to talk about for ADF?
No, I think the couple other things. I would just say that anybody who's on the road to CEO, you better love data, right? It is that you have to get comfortable with financials and financial statements. However you can do that. I think the great thing is learning is all online now. So it's not about, go to Georgetown University, take my class. But other than that, I think a lot of this content is out online. And if you apply yourself, I think there are companies out there that really want you to learn their tools and they want you to become an expert. But if you're on the road to CEO, you really have to get comfortable with data and understanding data and understand how trends emerge and work, and think about how you can test and analyze those tests.
I love it. Bret, thank you so much for joining today. It's been a great episode. People are going to learn a lot from this.
Yeah, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it.